Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending where in the world you're joining us from for today's episode of the Vibrant Workplace podcast. This is the show where we support a movement towards a better working world for both employers and employees. It's supported by NI Job Finder, and that's the place where you'll find vibrant workplaces offering quality careers. Today is a very special episode of the show for two reasons. One, because we've never shot one in person before. Nowhere to hide today, okay? So it's a first time for both of us. Secondly, though, and more importantly, because today is about showcasing life at one of our very special verified vibrant workplaces. We're here at Kukoon in Newry, and with the managing director, Simon Ward. Simon, welcome to the show. I say welcome to the show, but we're in your house. So
I'm glad you came to me this time. It's nice.
There's a lot that I want to dig into about what makes you such a good employer. But to begin with, just for context for people who might not know what a verified vibrant workplace is, Kukoon took part in our 12-week Vibrant Workplace Accelerator program, and they came out the other side of it with incredible results, and they proved that their people most often have a good or a great day at work, are engaged with the work that they do, and think other job seekers should come and work in the company as well. And I want to share a couple of stats with you about what we learnt about life at Kukoon during that 12-week process. So a couple of key stats here. First of all, Kukoon employees had 17.02 times as many good and great days at work as bad and terrible days at work. Secondly, we found that their employee engagement score was 86%. That actually increased from 84% at the start of the accelerator. It finished at 86. And when you're that good, it is those little marginal gains. Okay. I always say, when things are that good, it's more likely that the company's going to start to regress a little bit as opposed to get even better. It's harder to achieve, the 2% increase from 84 to 86 than it is to go from 10 to 30%. When you're really bad, it's obvious. Well, it should be obvious what some of your problems are. Whereas when you're really good, you've got to be really looking. You've got to really go looking to find out, well, where are those little improvements we could still make? For sure. The other thing that we found was that your employee retention intentions improved by 12.67% during the 12-week process and finished up with 87.1% of the workforce indicating that they were going to stay with the company, which is fantastic. Yeah. The last one that I want to finish with here, just before I hand over to you, Simon, to tell us a bit about yourself and the business, is that there was only 4.02% of the days in Kukoon that were negative. Now, something like this always really stands out to me because if I worked in a company back in 2014 before I went self-employed, where I only had 4 bad days in every 100 working days, I wouldn't be self-employed. That's the truth. And that's what this is really all about. I think we need to get more of those stories out there about what happens when you build a really good workplace culture, because ultimately the best job seekers are going to want to come and take a job with you. They're going to come to work more often. They're going to perform better when they're there, delight your customers. So they're going to come back and say good things about you and help you to attract other people to come and do business with you. They're going to stay with the company as well. There are real tangible reasons to build a better workplace culture. But still, despite that, most organizations don't pay attention to this stuff. So I've rambled on enough at the start. What I want to know from you today, Simon, is why did this stuff matter to you? Why did you decide to build this business in the way that it's been built? And do you want to give us a bit of backstory to both Kukoon and to yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I'll start with Kukoon because it's always easier talking about something else than yourself. Kukoon started in 2007. Paul and Clare Vallely at the time, it's not Clare Walsh, but they were brother and sister, started the company out, and they used to help their father go down to the carpet stalls, the market stalls, to be able to sell rugs in person, and they hated that job. And Paul always says he never thought 20 years later he'd be still handling rugs, but anything that their dad couldn't sell, they took this online eBay course and figured out that here, online selling, I can sell this to anywhere in the world rather than just people who attend the market. So that was a big eye-opener for them. Once they got on eBay, they were able to sell some of them. They started asking their dad for more. They started asking other people for more rugs to sell, and then it kind of just took off from there. So they're really the owners and the leaders of this company, and they're still here today helping out, leading us in the direction, which is fantastic. And Kukoon's the largest independent rug retailer in UK and Ireland. We were just talking about some of the numbers over Black Friday, and we're now shipping out about 5,000 rugs a day at some point, and those numbers are hugely impressive from where it started to where it is now. And we have a team of 55 to 65 employees, and that fluctuates based on time of year for temp staff, etc. But we're now a growing, scaling company that. The reason I joined Kukoon and why I love it is because we're on that journey of growth and opportunity and continuous improvement. Just a wee bit about myself. I started in HR. I grew up in a real small town just outside Newry in South Armagh, and I always wanted to get out. I watched too much American TV and I played too much basketball, and people were always like, "Oh, you should go to America." So I set off to America. I met my wife there, and I travelled around Australia and China and England, etc. And I finally moved over to America for 5 or 6 years there. Worked for an adhesive company, then worked for Amazon. And then decided that I want to get out of the rat race a bit, the corporate world, and came back home to Ireland. It was actually my wife dragged me home. Everyone thinks I dragged the American back here, but she was the one actually promoting the move. And we came back, and I talked to a few companies, and when I talked to Paul and Clare at Kukoon, I realised that I was like, okay, this is a down-to-earth company that knows its values and knows where it's going, and that's something I'd love to be a part of. And 4 years later, I'm still here and now in charge as MD, and really, really enjoying it.
I think that means so much, working somewhere where you just have the opportunity to be a human being and to be yourself. And, you know, I had David Hutton from TrueCorp, who obviously you've met on previous episode of the podcast. Same thing, he was talking about when he met the guys from TrueCorp. There was no ego. It was just people being people. I think we overcomplicate things. You know, I always think back to this expression that I heard from Simon Sinek one time, where he said that beyond the systems and the structures, a business is nothing more than just a collection of people. But we overcomplicate it. We build all the politics and hierarchies and everything else in, and then it becomes difficult. But people just want to go to a workplace where they can be themselves, be comfortable, and have those human relationships. And that's the stuff that makes the difference. And do you know what's really interesting for me about the story that you're telling there, about the origin story for Kukoon? You would think that, you know, you talked about Paul and Clare and how they built the business and where it came from. You would think that two people like that, who this is a business that means so much to them. They've built it from the ground up to become, you know, as you mentioned, the largest independent retailer of rugs in UK and Ireland, which is an incredible achievement. But you would think that they will have been in the trenches building the business, right? You would think when they get to the point where it's really successful, if anybody is going to be keeping hold, almost, you know, keeping a tight rein on things and almost not wanting to invest in people, because they, you know, you would think that those would be the sort of people that would almost be thinking, the success we've got now, the money that's coming in now, we deserve that because we've been in the trenches to get to where we are. But people like that are the ones that I'm finding are still, they get to the point where the business is becoming successful and they're thinking, we want to look after people, we want to have a good culture. Whereas you get the massive juggernauts who are turning over billions or hundreds of millions, and it's like the money's coming out of their own pocket. They don't want to look after their people. But I find a lot of the time the small businesses are the ones that do look after people. Why do you think that is? Why do you think for Paul and Clare it was important to them to build a business with a soul?
Yeah, I love that question. And as I mentioned, I had come from Amazon, and it was very corporate, and everything for me, it was very much like you had to give an awful lot to it. You gave an awful lot of hours. You got paid well to do it, and there was always a trade-off. And for me, that just wasn't everything. Life's too short for that. And when I came back to Ireland, I actually got 2 job offers. I won't name the other company, but the other company was, when I interviewed, there was 5 people, shirt, tie, suit, jacket, all interviewing me, all strict. And I made a couple of jokes because that's just the personality I have. And I could see they wanted to laugh, but they wouldn't allow themselves to laugh. I was just like, it's just not for me. I chatted with Paul, and I think he was wearing an Under Armour t-shirt and a pair of shorts and stuff while he was interviewing me. I was like, okay, I like, as you said, the down to earthness and what you had mentioned about like large companies, and once a company grows to a certain size, employees start to become a number rather than being a personal person. And Clare and Paul's vision, and one of the things we talk about in our purpose is to build a tribe to revolutionize the rug industry.
Yeah.
And it's not, we don't put the revolutionize the rug industry part first, because when we sat down to create a vivid vision, I don't know if you ever read the book from Cameron Herald, and when we really sat back and asked Paul and Claire and myself, like, why are we doing this? Like, what's the whole purpose? And it was really to bring people along on the journey and have people do it with us, because if you don't do it with people, then it can be quite isolating, quite lonely, and that's for Paul and Claire and myself. It's very important that we build a company and a group of people that all want to go on this journey together, and it's just a lot more fun if you do it that way.
A lot more fun. You yourselves are employees working in the business.
For sure.
And I think a lot of the time people reach a senior level in a company and they almost forget that. They almost forget that they themselves have an experience of working in the company, and most of the time it's a horrible experience because they're fighting people all the time, and they've got conflict and they've got problems and they've got drama. Wouldn't it be so much nicer if you yourself enjoyed your work?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I remember, I want to come back to our first conversation when you decided to sign up and take part in this process.
Sure.
At the time, it was called the Vibrant Workplace Challenge. I changed the word challenge then when I properly launched it to Accelerator, because
I like Accelerator. I used to like challenge too, though. I like a challenge.
I like challenge, but that says something about you. You see, you heard the word challenge and you were thinking, let me at it, right?
For sure.
But I think a lot of people were hearing the word challenge and they were going, oh, we're not ready for a challenge, right? They were scared of it. And I thought, well, what are we doing here? We're actually helping companies to go on a journey to improve their culture. So it's not just a challenge, it's not just a measurement. It's about helping you to go on a journey to get to where you want to be. So that's why I've changed it to Accelerator. But when I sat down with you, it was called Challenge. And I said, Vibrant Workplace Challenge, here's what we're going to do. Here's what it's about. Do you want to take part? Do you remember what your response was to me?
I probably was overconfident in some shape or form.
Your response to me was, we would smash your challenge.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Now here's the thing. I've put this together to be, in terms of the accreditation element, becoming a verified vibrant workplace, this is the most robust standard in the employer recognition space. I want a job seeker to have 100% confidence to know that if they take a job in a company and it's a verified vibrant workplace, that's a place where they know it's going to be a good move for them. Okay? There's no more robust standard. There's all these business awards and stuff where it's pay and display. Pay the money, you get the badge. You look at the business awards and stuff, and it's expensive to run those events. So therefore, you've got to cover costs. So how do you fill a room? You shortlist everybody. Okay, and that's what happens. It's 1,500 quid a table. Shortlist half the time is off the screen. You can't even read it. The words are that small. There's so many companies in the shortlist, right? It's not a shortlist. I wanted a standard that allows the best employers to truly be able to stand out. But some people will react to that with almost apprehension.
Yeah.
They'll be nervous because they're potentially paying to take part in something and they're not being guaranteed that they will get accredited. And there are organizations who haven't been accredited off the back of it, but they're now on a journey. So these are really, really tough benchmarks. And your response was, let me at it. We're going to smash it. Where did that confidence come from?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I have a lot of faith in our culture and our people. Probably the big one, we've done surveys before. We've done like a how's it going survey, which was a once a week thing, and we've done like Bamboo HR had a survey, but it wasn't in depth as what mooqi was for us. And so I had some confidence based on the track record. We've already done surveys and we've always improved on the back of stuff. So I kind of knew some of the results, what it could look like. And then you told me it was every day for 12 weeks. And I was like, okay, that's a different level of intensity. And we definitely learned an awful lot from going through that journey and having a daily basis. Because you ask us, the timing of a survey is very important to when you send it out. Like you ask employees like once a year. Like if you caught them on a Friday before a Christmas party, I'm sure your results are going to be okay.
Yeah.
You catch them on a Monday right before the busiest week of the year, the results might not be so good. And for us, we were like, okay, 12-week challenge. We're really, everything is going to come out in the wash here. We're gonna be able to see the good and the bad, the Monday scores, the Friday scores, to see what it all looks like. And the confidence came from probably doing some surveys before and knowing our team and our culture. And I think communication is probably the biggest one. And it sounds like an easy one to say, like, communication, but we have a morning meeting every week where the whole company gets together and we openly talk about issues. We challenge each other, we challenge process, but we we have a motto that we say, like, we blame the process, not the person. So if something goes wrong, like, what fell down in our process to allow that thing to go wrong, not who did it and start pointing fingers, etc. And I think that takes time to build, where people don't have a fear of retaliation, or don't have a fear of, if I did something wrong, I'm going to be shot here. But yeah, we've done some of the back work, and I felt like we had a great company culture, we had good communication, the employees knew the crack, and I had some surveys in the past. Not to lie, as soon as we were 1 or 2 weeks into this mooqi survey, I was like, okay, this could go either way here. So before you told us that we had passed it on, there was definitely some nerves. I was like, I don't know if we've done it.
Yeah. But you know what, right? The reason why it's every day is, first of all, there's a very small percentage of organizations on the planet that will do any kind of surveying. We think that most organizations do engagement surveys, because you go on the likes of LinkedIn and things like that, and you see the organizations that post about it. But you have to remember that the organizations that are even talking about surveys are the ones who, to some extent, care about knowing the results. For sure. Most organizations are not sat on LinkedIn. They're not thinking about employer branding. They're not thinking about employee experience and engagement. They don't even know what employee engagement is. So actually, most organizations are just in the grind, getting the job done. They're not thinking about this stuff, right? Then you get the percentage of organizations who are measuring engagement, but it's maybe once every 18 months or every 12 months. Then you get the next level, which is the organizations who are maybe doing it quarterly or something. And then you get the ones who are, they're maybe doing pulse surveys and things. It could be on a weekly basis, like what you were doing. Yeah. But those are measuring how people feel about topical issues. First of all, I've never felt that those kind of surveys actually measure engagement, because I think that what we do is we ask questions to people about what we want to matter to them. They're probing questions about directed topics. We ask them about what we want to matter to them, and then we prescribe them engaged or disengaged based on things they might not care about. Yeah. And I was talking with someone about this yesterday, and I gave them a couple of examples. I always remember a lady that worked in an organization that I worked in. She was there for 17 years. For 17 years at this point, she worked in a minimum wage job, part-time, doing customer service. Okay? And she was happy. She came to work, she performed, she knocked it out of the park. She was always a role model, both in terms of her behavior and attitude, and also in terms of her performance. For me, what's the problem with that person?
I don't see a problem.
Why is there a problem, right? But if you do the typical kind of engagement survey, it's going to ask directed questions about things like, let's say, are you growing and developing in the company? Now, for that person at that point in her life, all she wanted was a job that she could go and do in the times and days that suited her, give her a bit of money in her pocket, and didn't give her take-home stress. That's all she wanted. And she was happy with that, no problem. Okay? But that survey, she could only respond to that type of question by saying, well, no, I'm not growing and developing, because I'm just coming in and doing my job. Right, but why do we have to say she's disengaged then? For sure. She was performing. So I wanted to measure engagement differently. So we put together our own model for measuring engagement, was one thing. But I also then started to think, there's something else in here. I think that you can be engaged with your work on a deep, meaningful level. You might be bought into the purpose of the organization and where it's going. You might be growing and developing. You might appreciate the autonomy, different things like that. But there can be experiential factors on a day-to-day basis that are affecting you. And that might make you go, do you know what? I'm not going to work here anymore. So I remember I spoke with a lady a few months ago who had just left a bank. And she'd been in the bank for a couple of decades. She loved working in the bank. She had no intentions to leave. Then her manager retired. She got a new manager. She couldn't stand the new manager. Yep. So all of a sudden, she's coming to work. She's having a bad day, a bad day, a bad day, a bad day. And she quits. Right? But we don't know that through an engagement survey. Yeah. So that's where the daily pulse came from. I wanted to know day to day, how are people experiencing their work? I think that's as important to know as engagement. But almost no organizations on the planet track that.
For sure.
So we did that with you. And it must have been something at the start, as you say, we were going, uh-oh, where's this going to go? Because people can say anything. Yeah. But you still decided we're going to do it. Why?
Yeah, from our cultural standpoint, our motto is like, we always like to try things. Like revolutionize is a word that we use a lot, and we're to do that, they've got to be at the forefront of the industry. And we like to take risks, and we like to see how things go. One of our values is to think big and move fast, and that sometimes I'm a real culprit of it. I overuse that one. I move very fast to the point where some people are like, right, Simon, can you slow down for a minute? But in that, when we go to do things, and I'll use an example actually. The 4-day work week is something that we've rolled out here.
Yeah.
And that's based on the back of employee feedback. We knew, and our employees knew, that once we came back from COVID, that everyone liked being in the office, but then everyone still wanted some work-life balance and flexibility, etc. Because the COVID taught us over those years that's ideal for a work environment, work life. There has to be a balance. You can't just have people work 40 hours every day in the office. Well, you can, but it can be counterproductive as well as productive. And instead of us saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, we went back and we talked to our employees, and we tried a couple of things, and based on their feedback, and they're like, right, this is what could work, this is what couldn't work. And actually a big one for us was we sat down with them, and then it came up about the 4-day work week, and it sounded crazy at the time because you heard a couple of people doing surveys and trial programs over in England and stuff, but the amount of companies actually doing it that you could go and talk to and relate to were very few. And we were like, okay, that sounds like, right, let's hear it out. Let's see what we can do. And the team came together, but like what changes we'd have to make, and how that would impact the company, and what things we would commit to, and what things we'd hold to, and what things we could let slide. And once everyone came back and decided, okay, this is the way I think we can work it, I was ready to be like, all right, let's give it a whirl. But I knew, instead of let's give it a whirl, we call it a one-way and a two-way door. So two-way door decisions are really easy for me, for pro risk. So a two-way door is, if you walk out the door and it's not nice on the other side, you just walk straight back. And you're like, okay, that's a two-way door. A one-way door, you walk out. If you don't like it over there, tough shit. You're out there and you can't come back. So for us, it was, okay, this is probably more of a one-way door situation, where if we rolled it out in a trial, but once people experience the 4-day work week, that's tough to roll back on. All of a sudden people are like, oh, I got a taste of that three-day week. I don't want to go back. And so we were like, okay, let's take our time on it. And I spent about 3 weeks prepping with the team about this. And I was like, okay, like we really thought this through. I went to talk to one or two other companies in Northern Ireland and UK that have done it. So I was like, yeah, I think we're ready. I think we've talked it through. And they were like, yeah, it took us about 18 months of planning. And I was like, I've been planning this for about 3 weeks.
We're going to go.
And I think I'm ready. So then I held it off another 3 weeks, just to be honest, I didn't do anything in those 3 weeks. Not a blooming thing changed, but I remember thinking, like, at least people will have thought that I'll have thought about this a bit more. And once we got to the 6 weeks, I was like, you know what, we'll give it a whirl. And it's been up and running for us for about 18 months. And that's another thing for a culture. Like, there's a lot of trust, a lot of accountability, and it goes both ways. People know that if we talk about a giver and taker mindset. Like, the question true leaders and true people that are bought in and care about the company says, like, what can I do for the company, rather than people saying, what can the company do for me? Yeah. And I talk about discretionary effort an awful lot. Like, when I hear managers and people in other companies who are like, they're watching employees, what time did you clock in? You went to the bathroom twice today. How long was lunch? Yeah. And that's you can do that to try and maximize the hours that you get in the building. But we know from surveys, from Gallup, etc., like, people are productive probably 2.5 hours a day out of the 8-hour workday. If you Germany can get up to about 4 hours. But so I'm sitting back being like, okay, we can make this 4-day work week time up if we are more productive, we're more engaged, we're more energized, and people care more. And how do you do that? It comes back to people, culture, fundamentals of people know you care about them. Yeah. They then start to care about you and the company. And once you care about something, you're willing to work more than 2.5 hours a day on it. Yep. You're willing to put that effort in, and something goes wrong at night, you're willing to hop on, no bother, I'll jump in and fix this, etc. Because you know the company's good to you, and you're good to the company. And and that relationship works very well. If one person doesn't hold up their end of the bargain, then it starts to go a bit pear-shaped. And that's something that we at Kukoon have focused very hard on, and I didn't dive into my own background a lot, but like HR is my background, and I did that for about 10 to 15 years, and then I did operations for about a few years there. And for me, there's not a lot of MDs that have the HR background. You normally find managing directors, CEOs come from a commercial background, a finance background, etc. And it's a testament to Paul and Claire as well, trusting someone from a HR background to have a crack at MD, because we view it differently, we think about it differently, and understanding people, as your quote from Simon Sinek's perfect, like it's all just people. I talked to a couple of leaders that I'm close to, and I go to a coach and a mentor and stuff to try and better myself. And my mentor, Andrew McCracken, like he always tells me, like he's like, once you get to the level of a very senior level like MD, it's just all about people. It's all about relationship. That's all our job is.
Yeah.
And I wish more leaders understood that if you can make your team happy and engaged and create a good culture, like my job is to create the environment in which people can thrive in.
Love it.
And that's the one that it was a huge unlock for us.
Yeah.
And that's what enables us to do Vibrant Workplace Accelerator programs, and that's what enables us to have that confidence to say, you know what, we know we're good to the employees, and that we know our employees are good to us, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
And people don't get that. They don't realize they want their employees to give more and give more and give more, but they don't think about what they need to give back to get that. It's a two-way relationship. I remember being asked to go into one organization one time. It was a food processing company, and they asked me for personal impact training for 550 people. Right?
That's a lot of people.
My first question was, personal impact training for 550 people. Does everybody here need to make more of a personal impact? Is it possible there are some people who are giving everything that they can give? No, they just wanted personal impact training, 550 people. And I said, but what is it? What's the goal here? What is it you're trying to get out of this? When we're on the other side of it, what's going to be different that tells you it's going to be a success? And they said, we just want people to come to work and work harder. Right? And I said, but you realize the way that you get people to come to work and work harder is not by putting them on to a workshop and telling them to work harder in the same circumstances for the same return. It's by creating a culture where they want to be part of it, and they're so compelled by the work that they do that they come in wanting to make an impact. It's your culture you need to look at, not some training session with them. And actually, you're probably going to piss some people off. So there's going to be people there who are giving everything that they can give, and you're then putting them on a workshop telling them to work harder. That's really going to get their back up. So it's more, and the people aspect actually is very interesting, because when I look at the results of what came out of your accelerator, the number one thing that came up that determines whether people have a good or a bad day in Kukoon is
communication.
It's people.
People, yeah.
And it's actually in two ways. The number one mood influencer that was selected through mooqi during the 12 weeks was colleagues. That's whether it was a positive or a negative day. So one of the points that we try and stress with employees, with workforces, is you have the power to send your coworkers home having had a good or a bad day.
For sure.
Through how you interact with them. But actually clients comes up as well. And I find that a lot. It's the relationships, whether it's internal or external in the business. It's relationships, it's people. So you're absolutely right with what you say. And I love the fact, I hadn't thought about that actually, that your background is HR. You've been given the MD role here. And you're there, to use an American kind of term, to quarterback as you said, the sort of environment in which people can thrive. That's what it's all about.
You thought we're getting into the meat of it now, because when you were talking there, a couple of things you said really resonated with me in terms of what drives people and how you get that engagement. Companies were like, we'll do a training to make everyone engaged, and like that, you and I, but no, that's not going to work. So, and people then talk about, okay, well, if we want more of employees, we'll just have to pay them more, and pay is a touchy subject for me, because it's important that, for me, it's important that pay is not on the table. That's not the discussion point. Yeah. But for it not to be on the table, you have to pay people market value in a decent ways that, like, that's not the overriding concern, because like I read this quote where it's like, if you want to be happy for a day, You want to make your employees happy for a day, give them a pay rise. You want to make them happy for a year, change the culture.
Yeah.
And for me, it's very much like, pay. If you don't pay anyone, but try and make a good culture, you're gonna have a real hard time. But so take a pay out of it. Let's say it's a median out. You can be an average paying employee and still be world class, because people then think, all right, is it beanbags and is hockey puck and all this stuff? And like, for me, it's what you talked about, giving people meaningful work, and it's the trust and recognition, and just being able to tell people, like, hey, you're doing a great job, and giving people ownership and accountability. Like, I always tell people, being open and honest about Kukoon, like, we're not great at spoon feeding people like career development, career progression. That's just not something we're overall good at, because there's a lot of stuff going on and you forget. So if a person comes to us in a review and would say like, oh, my manager never told me to go on this course or something, I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. Like, that's not what we're good at.
Yeah.
But what we are great at is we don't actually put boundaries on people's roles, and we don't put scope on people. We don't have, no, stay in your lane, this is your role, you do this, and you deliver just these things. Like, if people are willing to put in the effort and put in the energy, and your role can expand, and then you take on more and you get paid better, and there's more value added. And these things where people know that here, if I give a lot, I get a lot.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of model we set up here at Kukoon, where everyone's got a role and everyone's got KPIs, etc. But to a point where we're sitting back being like, what's the overall thing we're all trying to deliver?
Yeah.
And who can add value in what areas? And the amount of examples I could give you throughout the entire company of people moving from one department to the next, expanding roles, taking on more responsibility, because we like to grow our people internally. Like, that's a huge focus. We know that talent, for us, attitude and energy and effort is way better than any qualification you can go and get.
Yeah.
Because people come in with the right mentality, can really push far like a Kukoon. And I think that's the nitty-gritty. Giving people meaningful work, giving them trust, accountability, recognition. These things matter so much more to people than paying benefits. Like, they're not going to say that in their review, because trust me, everyone's going to want more money. And I never read anyone be like, no, I'm perfectly well paid. Don't ignore me for that. But those are things that get you through 365 days a year, not just review time once or twice a year.
Do you know what's interesting? When we talk about paying benefits, a lot of the time when I go into a company, I remember countless examples where where it's been said to me by managing directors, we'll bring you in here, you can do work with us, but the topic of compensation is off the table. You're not allowed to talk about that with our staff. And I always say, no, I'm not coming in if you're not prepared to talk about everything. Because the thing is, if the thing that's affecting your business, that's stopping you being able to fill vacancies, that's stopping you being able to retain staff, if the thing that's costing you the most money is that you're not paying a fair wage, you need to know that.
For sure.
And you may find it out and decide not to do something about it, but you need to know that that's where your problem is. Because you can spend all your money and all your time fixing all these things around the side. And if that's the issue, why not just tackle the issue? So I won't work with an organization if they're not truly committed to finding out what's really going on and to addressing the issues. But I find that I think there's a fear within senior teams where they think everything's just going to be about money. And what I find is that most of the time it's not about money. Within mooqi, in every company that's used it, the least selected mood factor, whether positive or negative days, the least selected mood factor is pay. Nobody's thinking about pay. Nobody's talking about pay. You ask them how their day was, and they're talking about the relationships with their coworkers, the relationships with their manager, meetings, workload, etc., well-being. They're not talking about pay, how much you're paying them to do the job. And there's all these stereotypes that go around about today's workforce being lazy and entitled and greedy, and they won't come to work and work hard if you don't pay them a fortune. But I think that's these generalizations, because what I find from the data is that's not what they're focused on. What they're focused on is they want to come to work and do a good job. And if they come to work and they set out to achieve this, this, and this, if they get it done and they have a good experience doing it through how they interact with the people they work with, they have a good day.
Absolutely.
If they don't get it done, or they have a bad experience doing it through the way they interact with people, they have a bad or a terrible day. So I've always referred to stuff like compensation and benefits and more things like as well, how we resource teams, etc. If you've got a skeleton workforce that can't handle the workload and they're operating at the point of burnout all the time, that's a problem. I refer to these things as the taboo factors of employee engagement because nobody wants to talk about them.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You have to get the fundamentals right. And that's what you
Agreed.
mentioned there. You've got to get these right to begin with. But then the other stuff is the stuff that really becomes the focus that can take you to where you're trying to get to.
Absolutely.
And it's the human stuff. And people don't realize that. They think when they hear of organizational culture, someone's going to tell them, put a beer tap in, get a pool table.
I think the beer tap would help, to be fair. But I completely agree. Like from a culture standpoint, and something I didn't mention earlier, and I think that's real tough. Sometimes companies, especially larger companies, like they try and please the masses. And when I first joined the company, that there was an issue where Paul would run a business a certain way, and then Claire would run a business a certain different way.
Right.
So when I first joined, it didn't take you very long to know that, okay, they would do it differently. And we all sat down together and was like, right, we don't have Paul Inc., we don't have Claire Inc., we don't have Simon Inc., like we have Kukoon.
Yeah.
So what a Kukoon want, and there's huge alignment there from all of us of this is the stuff we do actually care about, and this is what we are. And when we first rolled that out, like what our values are and our continuous improvement model, and like if someone joined our company and they didn't like change or really struggle with change, I swear to God, Greg, they wouldn't last a week.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that it's just not for them. But we're open and honest about that. Instead of trying to make that person feel okay about, okay, no, you don't have to change. The rest of the company will change, but you just do. Like, we know that doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
And we're very open and honest about, you know what, we care that people turn up.
Yeah.
They give a shit.
Yeah.
They're bought in, they're here for it, the good times and the bad, and we're all rowing this boat together.
Yeah.
Like, we tend to put a couple of sayings up on the wall, like, just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Nah, that's a huge one for us. Like, just that, we have no tolerance for that.
Yeah.
Like, we're all in this together. No one, like, you hear of all the companies, like, people getting shouted at and stuff. You're a grown person. Like, you're a grown adult.
Yep.
The fact that anyone gets shouted at in this day and age blows my mind. I shout at my kids, and that's about the height of it.
And they shout back.
And then my wife shouts at me, and there's all that thing. But for the most part, the shouting and all, that's got to go. But we have these cultural things that align us, so we know that this is Kukoon. And then we don't apologize for it. And we know that it doesn't please everyone.
Yeah.
And when we roll out a certain policy, a certain thing, like, we take all the feedback and we gather it and we make sure that, but we had to go through a transitional journey there. Yeah. If you asked me to do this survey 3 years ago, I would have been like, the mooqi meetings and stuff, I was like, okay, we probably wouldn't have passed then.
Yeah.
And we've gone on that transition knowing that here, instead of, we're now unapologetically ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's not for everyone. And we openly say that.
That's the best thing you can do, because so often when it comes to employer branding, companies present themselves as these, adult playgrounds. Yeah, right. Sure. Like, oh, it's going to be incredible here. We're a family, and all the rest of it. It's lovely, and they put pictures up of all the away days and everything. And it looks like it's going to be so fun. There's going to be no work to do. We're just going to have the crack, right? It's going to be great. Then the person joins the company and they realize that it's nothing like that.
For sure.
And what do? They leave. Right. There's so much to be said for. I think people are scared to say we work hard here. Do you know what? I actually think people want to do work where they make a difference. I think people feel so much better when they go home knowing they've done a day's work.
For sure.
Than trying to fill your hours.
Yeah, or skived off for 5 hours that I feel great. Like, 100%.
Yeah. So I think that openness, that transparency is so important. And I think there's a real imbalance in this organizational culture space at the minute, because I think more organizations are paying attention to organizational culture than ever, but they're kind of being led down the garden path because they're being told about all these gimmicky things that they need to do, all this stuff they're throwing money at, right? And I actually think it's almost creating a culture of entitlement in a lot of businesses where they're just throwing stuff at people, and people are becoming lazy. They're sitting back and they're taking, but they're not thinking about, well, what's my contribution? And that's missing in the conversation. And you said, not in these exact words, but you said a few minutes ago, you're going to get this, but you're going to give that. It's a two-way relationship. I think we should be having those conversations and saying, we want this to be the best place to work that you've ever worked in. But in return, we want you to make a really good impact for us too.
Greg, we used to measure happiness. There was a happiness score. And we try and get this happiness score up, and then we do really well in happiness. And then when you took a step back after a year of happiness scores, the times that the company was doing the worst, the happiness score was at its highest.
Oh, yeah.
And the time that the happiness scores were the lowest is when the company was doing its best.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this whole happiness metric is completely scuffed. That is no good to anyone, because those two things aren't aligned right now.
Yeah.
And we changed happiness because, as you said, but creates a culture of entitlement. You were like, we'll just keep giving you stuff. As long as you get the stuff, then everything's fine. And that's a culture that we quickly snapped out of and changed and realized the metric for us isn't actually happiness. It's engagement. It's whether the person's turned up and give a shit. That's what we care about. Not, oh, you're happy. You're happy doing nothing, but you're happy.
Yeah.
You're playing the pool table all day long, and you're going drinking a pina colada.
Yeah.
So you're happy. The results are shit, but you're happy.
There's not going to be a company to come back to if it keeps going that way.
Exactly.
You know?
So we switched it from happiness to engagement, and that was a big unlock for us. And now we've seen the correlation. When people are super engaged, the company does well. And when people are disengaged, the company starts to drop. And that's far easier to track.
But what they don't realize, a lot of companies, is that they think happiness is engagement.
For sure.
9 times out of 10, when I go into a business and I say, what's the culture like here? The response that I get is, oh, we've got people who've been here 15, 20 years, right? Okay. But just because you've got people here 15, 20 years doesn't mean they're engaged, doesn't mean they're coming to work, giving what they can give, helping the company to take the next step. It just means they're staying because potentially it's a cushy job.
For sure.
Okay? There's organizations that I know of that have policies of paying above their competitors, significantly above their competitors. What that means is people will take jobs with you and they'll stay. They'll never leave because they're not going to get the same money somewhere else. But they're not necessarily going to give a damn about what they've been hired to do.
Well, I've got a wee snippet for you just from one of what you said there triggered for one of my ex-leaders always taught me was like, does the person have 15 years experience or do they have 1 year's experience 15 times? And for me, when you come to hiring and recruitment and training and stuff, people see like, okay, this person has had 10 years experience. And it's very important for us to be able to say, wait a minute, that was the same role in the same company in the same job for 10 years. There likely was a pattern. There's always ups and downs, you experience different things, but it's probably not 10 full years experience. Where if you see someone who's trained and progressed and developed in different roles and different companies, and as they've gone up, then you start to say, okay, this person's got that years experience. Because I remember I got held back at a company because I was young and I'd already progressed quite far. And it was like, oh, but this guy's got 25 years experience and this guy's only got 2.
Yep.
And the guy with 25 years experience used to come to me all the time.
Yep.
Ask me, hey, Simon, what the hell do I do here?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Can you do that for me?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, no bother, I'll help you out, mate.
Yeah.
And then when he got pipped for a job over me, and this is going back 10 years, I remember thinking, I was like, that system is broken. That is completely scuffed. So just when you said that we have people in this company for 15 years, for me, that's not always a great sign.
But it's like everything. What we do is we look at time served. Even in terms of, we come back to the 4-day week, most companies would never do that because they're thinking to be successful, they need their people there X number of hours. They're not thinking to be successful, we need impact.
For sure.
It's the same when you talk about someone there 15 years, someone there 1 year. Which one makes the impact? Because that's the one that you want to promote.
Absolutely.
So come back to that 4-day week. I meant to ask you this when you brought it up there. I'm really interested. I'm not going to ask you who it was, but what profile of person was the person who brought up we should do a 4-day week? Because I'm really keen to know what was the reaction to that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was always right behind it because I like to play golf. So for me, I was like, the golf course is nice and quiet on Friday. So my wife always jokes, she was like, you really got your company to a 4-day work week so you can go play golf on a Friday. I was like, no. And there was a whole bunch of us. We knew, Greg, that when we came back from COVID, that we want to work collaboratively. We want to be together. We enjoy being together because we honestly just think things move at a much faster pace. That we're able to go far quicker. And we say, right, if we're able to move at that fast pace, what that means for us is that's a huge unlock for us. But we then also said asking people to work in an office 5 days a week right after COVID, and like that was seriously frowned upon, and that you wouldn't get the talent of the people or the skill sets that we would need when we went to recruit. So we all sat down, and it was the management team of about 15 people, and people were pitching different ideas. And I think it was I won't drop his name in case he doesn't want me to, but it was actually a green blue type of person who brought up, in terms of someone who starts to he thinks long and hard, and he thinks about everyone as a company culture. And they say that, or what are the solutions? And we are very open as a company to out of the box solutions. You're right. Like in certain companies, if you brought up, hey, we should do a 4-day work week, everyone would just assume, you get that guy
You'd be out the door.
100%. But as soon as it brought up, everyone was like, how do we make that work? And like, even once I had heard it, I was like, in the back of my head, I was like, I'd love that, but geez, how are we gonna get to that?
Yeah.
But once you have that culture of, okay, let's change, let's adapt, let's revolutionize, let's do our thing, then we reviewed it. And as I said, it's three weeks later, I was ready to pull the trigger on it. And then we've done a review after a year there. We said we reviewed it, and director sat down and had a conversation, and there was definitely stuff that we got wrong.
Okay.
And there was definitely stuff that we're like, okay, annual leave being one of them.
Okay.
We still had the length of service bonus for people, and certain tiers of the company got certain annual leave days. So sometimes people were on a 4-day work week and having 40 days holidays. And that doesn't include the 26 Fridays that they got off during the year as well. So we were sitting there like, okay, we've got something a little wrong. Someone was off for like 2 months straight and still had like 15 days holidays. I was like, okay, we messed that part up a little bit. So we've had to come back, and we had to sit down and review some of the intangibles, because you don't get it right. But there's a quote, I've lost the name of the guy who says it, but so some of the best business leaders, like, they say like, we move faster than everybody else. That's why I'm better than everybody else. By the time you're sitting planning and thinking about what to do, I've already tried it. I've failed. I've done it 2 more times, and now I'm starting to get it right. And you're just starting.
Yeah.
And for us, we're very much that way in terms of think big, move fast. Like, let's give it a go. And if it works, like, we roll everything out and pretty much beta version, and say, we tell our employees like, hey, we're going to give this a try. And that human connection and talking to people like people.
Yeah.
And just being like, hey guys, we don't really know how this is going to work. Some leadership teams like to think that I have to have all the answers, and I have to come and tell the employees, and I have to be the voice of reason and guidance. And I think clarity is so important in an organization, and I bang on about clarity all the time. But you can be clear that you don't know what you're doing. Because people don't like someone who's like, oh, I have all the answers all the time. It's far more relatable if you sit down with employees and be like, you know, guys, I don't really know how this is going to go. Yeah. I want it to work. You want it to work. Let's try and make it work together. Yeah. But let's be honest with each other. If it doesn't work in a few weeks or a month, we're going to sit down, we're going to meet again, and then we might have to roll it back. Yeah. And I think those things are crucial to a business, and helping leaders understand that. I think probably the more senior and the more comfortable you get, the more you can sit in a meeting and be like, I didn't get that at all. I don't understand what you're talking about. Can you run that back? But you feel like if you're a junior or mid-manager and you sit in a room with seniors and be like, I didn't get that at all. Like, they would never say that. You just pretend. You just be like, oh yeah, I know what they're doing. So we're trying to build that culture where we're all open and honest about what we're good at, what we're bad at, what we know, what we don't.
I love that, because exactly what you said. Most of the time, there's almost this insecurity that people develop within themselves the higher up they go in an organization, because they feel like they almost, if you get promoted and you become a manager for the first time, you almost feel like you have to justify that you were the right choice. You're trying to prove to the people who promoted you, but also to the people who are maybe disgruntled that they didn't get the job, that you're the right person for that job. So you won't ask anyone for help because you think it looks like you're weak then.
For sure.
So you start that leadership journey with this mentality of, I need to have the answer to every problem. And then you take that, the further up you go in the organization, then you get to the top and you're having those sleepless nights and all the rest of it. You've got every problem you're trying to solve yourself. Do you know what? Your job is not to have every answer. You're a human being, no matter what your job title is.
For sure.
And if you've got, how many people have you got here now?
58.
So you've grown again in the last few months.
For sure. So
you're up to 58, all right? So you've got 58 people. That's 58 brains. You've got one brain.
For sure.
You know?
100%.
So if you've got a problem and you've got 58 people there, any one of those people might have the answer. So
Absolutely.
I love the fact that you're prepared to bring everyone together and go, look, we've got a problem. What do you think? Let's share ideas, etc. If someone makes a mistake, someone makes a mistake. But I love as well, come back to something else that you mentioned about the speed at which you operate. The fact that you saw 3-day week, jump it, I'll hold it off for 3 weeks just for optics here, but we'll give it a go anyway, right? There's most of the time, organizations that I speak to, and I've been self-employed since 2015, okay? What I've realized over the years is that there's probably minimum 18 months from I first speak to somebody to the point where we start doing any work on their culture. They know they need to do it. They knew they needed to do it 6 months before, in fact,
absolutely.
years before they ever spoke to me. But getting to the point where they can just press the button and hit go, even if it's not working with me, something they can do themselves internally, they hesitate and hesitate and hesitate and hesitate. And you know what's happening during that time that they're hesitating? Their problems are getting bigger.
No doubt about it, Greg. Yeah.
Just do the thing that you know needs to be done. And do you know what? Back to what you did with the 4-day week. You might have done that. You talked about the one-way and the two-way doors. I think if you're transparent with people and you say, look, we think this can be good for you and we think it can be good for the business, let's give it a pilot. And if it works, we'll keep doing it. If it doesn't work, obviously, we'll have to roll it back. I think that every organization should be prepared to trial things, because if you don't, you're going to get left behind by your competitors. So what I want to ask you about is, you obviously jumped in, you gave it a go, you've been doing it for quite some time now. And I know that you mentioned you did that review at the end of the year. Did you take stock of things at the start to compare then after a while and see what impact has it had on business metrics and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. When you, and it was tougher on certain roles to get exact metrics. And I think sometimes people get in metric paralysis where they can't make a decision because they don't have a clear enough metric to it. But we took a step back and we're like, right, what's the turnover of the company? What's the net profit of the company? What are overhead? Like, what are some big, large metrics? And then how do we tie some of them back into productivity, the work week, etc., and the hours? And really, for us, I could bang on about 10 or 15 different metrics we were tracking, but we knew, you could just tell by the culture and the feel of people coming in, and people were still doing, even though they had the Friday off.
Yeah.
I was still getting I was on the golf course, still getting phone calls about work the whole time.
Yeah.
And I never minded, because I love that people care about the company as much as I do. And I know that, and I think that's a huge part of it, where once you give people that onus and freedom, it's back to that discretionary effort part. Yeah. They're no longer working, I work 9 to 4, 9 to 5, whatever it is.
Yep.
They know that we agreed here, when the company needs it, we'll all chip in, we'll all help. But we want to offer you that flexibility as well, where, hey, if during the summer months we're a bit quieter and you want to go enjoy your 3-day weekends, you go ahead, right ahead. And people do it guilt-free. At the start, people were like, oh, is this okay, sort of stuff. And now it's like, go back to your point about speaking about companies just need to dive in and companies need to do it. Like, I think fear holds it back a lot in certain aspects, especially like if you go into a review with someone, they always think the worst, because as soon as they always think internally. And I bet you a lot of business leaders out there be like, oh, the numbers could be so bad, the numbers could be this. And I bet you they're not as bad as people think. I think the numbers will start better than people assume. I know you've told me some horror stories, never give me a company name, but some horror stories of metrics, and like, but at least you know. Yeah. And you're in a better spot now than you were 2 weeks ago, when you knew it was bad, you just didn't know how bad.
It's worse to not know.
For sure. So for me, I always think it's not as bad as you think. And you sit down and review, and like, I have reviews with people, and at the end of it, it's just a normal chat, and they're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as that. I was like, what were you expecting? like everyone should be on the same page from the start. So yeah, fear shouldn't hold people back. Keep pushing along.
Before we go any further, I'm going to ask Mr. Producer, how are we doing time-wise?
Well, 56 minutes, 30 seconds.
What's the time now?
And the time is 3:34.
3:34. You need to be finished up by?
In 9 minutes.
9 minutes, okay. Right. I forgot to put a watch on, so I was going right.
Dude, I had the same thought. I was like, how long it is? But
yeah. Okay, so what I want to ask you about is, I always think there's those real acid test moments that tell you whether your people have your back or not. And I know that you have some real examples.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So what has told you that you're running this business in the right way?
Yeah, it's a good one. The discretionary effort topic, again, banging on about it, but we had a flood here in October of last year, right at the end of October. It's right before peak season, and the building had about 4 foot of water in it. And this was right before our busiest time of the year, and I remember being like, okay, this is D-Day, this is the worst case scenario. And so we closed the building, closed the next day, and it was on the second day I got a message, me and Paul and stuff, well, in the senior management group got a message just being like, here, I think we can come up with an idea here or a plan here. And it wasn't led by me and Paul and stuff. It was a couple of people said, I think we can do this. We should go get some waiters and try this, etc. And I was like, guys, I'm not asking anyone to go into the building. And they're like, I know you're not asking, but we're happy to go.
They're there with their goggles on.
They didn't go goggles. You wouldn't want to swim in this water, Greg. And we had 15 people that were putting on waiters and coming into the building and seeing what the damage was downstairs. But we had also so much stock upstairs. Like we have a 3-store building, and they were like, well, if we take the rugs that we can for our customers, to try and get as much customer orders out for our customers that we could. And they were like, here, if we take these out and we back a tractor up with a trailer out to that window, and then we're able to drop them down from there. And like all these crazy ideas that like I would never have sat and been like, here guys, this is the plan. Because if you come up with that plan, you sound like a lunatic, especially if you're the one leading asking people to do it. But when the team's coming up with that plan of, here, can we make this happen? And the amount of people that were just putting in the effort, putting in 14, 15 hour days without any ask about overtime or pay or us asking them to do it. And that's when I took a step back and we got through that peak period, and it was one of our most successful years. It could have been far better if we didn't have the flood, let's be clear. But I remember thinking like, what a team. Like what a culture we've built here, that people would do that out of their own discretionary effort, just to be like, you know what, I'm here for the company. And that stands the test of time. Like.
You don't get that if people don't have your back if they don't feel like you've got their back.
Completely agree.
I mean, there's a company that's going to come onto the accelerator in January. And I always remember, because previously I did a cultural evaluation with them, but it was done really manually and it was slow and it was a drawn out process. Now, obviously, we have mooqi that automates the whole thing. But I did that, and one of the things that I did as part of the evaluation was I offered private consultations where employees could come and tell me what's it really like, what's going on that they don't want to say in front of everybody else, right? And people went out of their way to come to me and say, at times when I've had personal problems in my life, when I've been facing a crisis, this company's had my back. The managing director has come to me and said, don't worry about anything, we've got you. And in return, and I remember this one guy in particular said to me, in return, if a competitor organization came and offered me a higher salary, I wouldn't even talk to them about it.
I have a real life example of that, Greg. My wife got conned in this out of this phone call. Complete to be a bank. They had all our transaction history and stuff, and we lost all our money.
Oh, no way.
And I mean, I was on the golf course when this happened, and I rushed home, wife in bits, and I was trying to console her, but inside I'm like, shit,
what are we gonna do?
What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
This is not good. And I remember calling Paul and telling what happened. He's like, don't worry, Kukoon's got you. And I remember that feeling, and they did have my back, and fortunately we were able to get all the money back in like in like 48 hours, and everything went back to normal, everything was fine. But to your point, I'll never forget that Kukoon had my back when I needed them, and Paul had my back, and Claire, and I was like, okay, so when push comes to shove, like as you said, doesn't matter what another company offered me right now, I'm on the Kukoon journey. Like.
It's that trust that you have with people that makes such a difference. You know, what you do for people will pay off tenfold in return. The loyalty you give them, the loyalty that they will give back. So look, I know we've got to wrap it up here. The last bit that I want to ask you about is your experience on the accelerator, because even that process itself, what we're doing is we're asking people every day for 12 weeks to log their mood, but we're also asking people to take part in mooqi meetings, come to those meetings and have authentic conversations about what's going on. They don't lean into that process and they don't take part if they don't believe in what it's truly about.
For sure.
Right? So you had people who for 12 full weeks, every day they gave that feedback and they turned up to those regular mooqi meetings, which you call
Hot tubs.
Hot tubs, that's not weird at all. Okay.
Not my name, trust me, right? That's Sean's name.
So you were having your hot tubs. You weren't actually getting into hot tubs, okay? But maybe you were.
Let's be clear, we were not in hot tubs.
But people leaned into that. They really took part. I asked for a minimum response rate during that 12 weeks of 60% from the whole workforce because we want to know that this sentiment reflects the whole business.
Absolutely.
People only take part in that if they truly believe in it. What did you do to get people's buy-in to the process? And what was the process like in terms of, the conversations in the mooqi meetings, etc.?
Yeah, it's a very good question. From a service that I mentioned before, we had done service on a weekly basis, and I would get all these stuff that people said, "Oh, this could be better," or "Could we do this," etc. And then I would go out and I would enact all those things, and I'd be like, "Here, look, we've changed this. We're doing this now." I would talk to a few people to arrange, "Can we make this happen?" And this happened for probably about a year, where I was just implementing all these changes, all the improvement to make life better, and then like the burnout came when we realized that, one, I was doing a lot of heavy lifting here, but two, the employees started to just be like, "Oh, I want this to be better," and pinged it off to Simon to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sat back and we're like, you know what we actually need is, the culture doesn't come from me. I'm not Kukoon's culture. The culture is every single person, and we all chip to it.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, and how does that look like? And you were the one that helped me with that, Greg, talking to me about here, the culture comes from the team.
Mm-hmm.
When we rolled out mooqi, we rolled it out completely different and saying that, guys, this is your survey, this is your culture, this is your company. What do you want to do to make it better?
Yeah.
To the point where I actually wasn't involved in any of the mooqi meetings, any of the what we call hot tub meetings, and but I still checked in with the leaders of the hot tub, just been, "Hey, everything going all right? Do you need any help with anything?" But for the most part, the teams were coming up with, they came together, they discussed some issues, and then they came up with solutions that they could enact and they could change. And that gives so much empowerment back to our employees to make these changes, to the point where all these surveys are happening, all these discussions are happening, and no one was coming to me asking for approval or anything. They were just changing things left and right.
They're now doing 3-day weeks.
And the company was getting so much better without me having to do anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this empowerment of the culture coming from the whole company, that was the big unlock for us.
And that's what the process is trying to do. It's trying to cascade ownership of the lived experience in the company out through the team, so everyone leans in to tend to and nurture the culture of the business.
For sure.
Because so many businesses will do things like they'll appoint a chief happiness officer. Lovely people, great values. They wouldn't do that work if they didn't have good values, but they can't be responsible for making everybody else happy.
Absolutely.
Or engaged. Everyone's got to commit to that and play an active role in it, and that's what you've done. And what we now know about Kukoon is that you are a vibrant workplace, and genuinely that is one of the best, you're one of the best organizations in the planet to work for. There are very few organizations in the planet that can say that their people most often have a good or a great day at work, are engaged with the work they do, and think other people should take a job in the company too. And thank you for choosing to do business that way, because it's not just a commitment to your people and your business, it's a commitment to society as well. We would have a better world if every organization cared about their culture and the experience of work that people have working in the company.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it. As I said, when you were telling us whether we would pass or not, I was a little bit nervous, and we're delighted to pass the program. We were able to learn a lot. So
you said at the outset we would smash it. You smashed it.
Exactly.
So well done.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for coming on and sharing what you
course.
have with everybody. Simon is going to come to the next Vibrant Workplace Forum event, which is going to take place on the 30th of January. 2025. I don't know when people will listen to this episode. Maybe you're going to be listening to this in like 2045. Going, oh, how did I go to that event? It was 20 years ago. What? That'll be success if they're still listening to this story then.
Sure. I call this.
But yeah, so Simon's going to come. We're going to have some great speakers at that event. So look up, if you get in touch with me, Craig at vibranttalent.co.uk, I can send you information on that event, how you can get tickets. You can come, you can meet Simon, you can hear that story. If your organization is struggling with talent attraction, engagement, or retention, there is a scorecard on my website that's linked there. You can take a Vibrant Workplace scorecard to see what's going on, and it'll give you a free report with an indication of where your strengths and where your opportunities for improvement are. So I would encourage you to do that. Simon, if we have people listening to this episode who are thinking, I want to go and work for that company, where should we direct them to?
Yeah, Kukoon.com, always the best place. Find that careers page, and obviously just reach out to myself as well, Simon at Kukoon.com.
Thank you so much for what you've shared with us today. I've learned a lot. I think we could have made this a half-day episode, to be honest
could have,
with you.
for sure.
Need to go to the bar after this and just get it all out there. I hope those of you who have tuned in have enjoyed this episode. Please, if you have, give it a 5-star rating, a follow and a share on social media to help us to get these stories out there and encourage that better working world. We can change the way the world works together. That's it for this episode. I'll see you next time.